into HB RV Lifestyle, the podcast. We are live in living color. No. breaking news out of the breaking news out of the RV industry. We have some God. There's some news that I need to bring up in three stages that's going to directly affect the RV consumer. No matter if you're selling your coach, private party, you're buying a new one, you're buying a used one, doesn't matter if you're buying from the dealer, buying private party, this is going to directly affect everybody at every level of even the outdoors community. And where this came up was, hey, Theo, Merry Christmas. Where this all came up is three conversations that I've had over the last 7 days. All three people that I talked to are at some point or in some form or way at the top of the food chain of the manufacturing side, the part side, or the banking side of the RV industry or even the marine industry. So like your boats, your power sports, etc., etc. And here's what's really going to be a breaking point of what's going to make or break a good economy or a good camping season in 2026. So we're going to start the first thing is there was a conversation with someone that I had yesterday, talked to him for a while. We're going to stay in contact where we were talking about the possibility of the RV industry going to a factory direct model and have their own private dealerships like the old Coachman days. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about that on the inner workings of some of the smaller manufacturers like Adventure Campers who sell Scout. And there's also been some talks among some of the overland community about getting away from the dealer model and just selling factory direct. Here's what the problem is, okay? There are so many antitrust laws and there's so many things being put into place or that have been put into place where to do a factory direct sale to a consumer of an RV wouldn't work. And here's why. And I'm going to give you the example. So Scout Campers is the closest to a hybrid model that I'm aware of, where you buy it factory direct and you take delivery and possession for it at the dealership. But they only have one dealership per area. So like the dealership I work with has Northern California. Okay. There's a dealership in San Diego that handles most of Arizona and San Diego County. You have one in Nevada. You have one up in Oregon. You have one here, one there. So there's only one location we pick this up. In order to go see a demo, Merry Christmas. Thank you, Patrick. In order to go see a demo, you got to drive hundreds, if not thousands of miles just to go see the unit you want to see in person unless you wait for a show. So there's no way that you could grow that industry or grow that company beyond maybe 150, 200 units a year because no matter what happens, the consumer still wants to go up and touch and feel the unit. Okay. Merry Christmas, everybody. So we have to look at the fact that in order to be able to go back to a factory direct dealership model like Tesla, that used to be that way with Coachman back in the MRT days, you would have to revamp the entire system to where you had a dealership in every single market. It's the reason why the Coachman model failed and why they went back to the dealership model. Now, I understand where it's coming from because you guys have to understand something. Manufacturers and dealerships have been at odds with each other. And I've said this a million times before. They've been headbutting with each other since the end of COVID. Okay. So since the end of COVID, I've been saying this for the last 3 years, dealerships have been two bulls in a china shop because the manufacturers were used to building 600,000 units, 500,000 units. They hired all these people, they built all these factories, they invested in the infrastructure of Indiana and Michigan, Idaho, Iowa, Oregon, California. They invested hundreds of millions of dollars into the infrastructure to be able to build more units and keep up with the demand. And they forgot, oh crap, 1% buys these things. And so you overbuilt, overstuffed the dealers, and now the dealers are like, I'm not being loyal to you anymore. Screw brand loyalty. I'm going to go to the cheapest guy. And that in turn screws up a lot of what goes on with the consumer, because a consumer that went to and I'm going to pick on Camping World, a consumer that went to a Camping World last year and saw brand A and fell in love with brand A, but because brand A didn't give the deal that Camping World want, Camping World went and got brand C to replace it because it's cheaper and they can make more money. So that's where that mindset wraps back around. What needs to happen, and hear me out on this, what needs to happen is the manufacturers need to pump the brakes on 2026. I don't care if it's Brinkley, Forest River, Grand Design, Genesis Supreme, I don't care who they are. Pump the brakes, cut what you're building in half, furlough people, build only 6 months out of the whole year next year, and then retool, come back, and find your right partners again that are going to be brand loyal. Now, there are certain brands that don't have this problem. Okay. Right now, Brinkley doesn't have that problem. I foresee them having that problem in the future. It's not their fault. It's actually the fault of, well, it is kind of their fault. They're starting to price themselves out of the market. But outside of that, it wouldn't really be their fault. Grand Design and Winnebago are losing dealers because they keep threatening to sign other places rather than just working with the dealerships and partners they have. Forest River and Thor have divisions and brands and GMs and sales managers that are the same way. So you have to, at some point, realize that you're hurting your dealer base and your consumer base. And at the end of the day, you're hurting your factory worker, you're hurting your own bank account. That's the bottom line. If we're going to take any lesson out of the last 3 years, the lesson needs to be learned going into 2026 is you should have done what I told you to do 3 years ago. If in December of 2022, you halted all production for 4 months, you laid everybody off, you furloughed them, you let them go grab unemployment, and you fired the factories back up around March, maybe April of 23, and built for 4 months, and then shut down all of July and all of August, except for prototyping your new stuff you're coming out with. By the time January of 24 rolled around, you would have been clean. You would have found who your loyal partners are. You would have found where your real loyalties lie. You would have found out the consumer base was going to be happier and movement would have more occurred at a quicker pace and inventory would have turned. But because of the fact that you relied on numbers that were a fugazi, it was fucking fairy dust. That's the numbers that were out there during COVID. They were fake numbers. You relied that being your base point instead of going back to 2017, 2018 and going, wow, we only built 340,000 units and we didn't have that great a year at 340. Maybe we should cut it down to 220, 210, and then have a complete reset. If they had done that, then you wouldn't have had you would have had a problem still, but the problem would have been lessened and quicker. instead of the crash of pricing occurring from August of 22 to February of 24, it would have probably been like March of 23 to June of 23 and it would have been over. Okay. Patrick, they're never going to build half the units and they're not going to be better, but they're going to be, see, the problem is there's a certain amount of units where everything comes out okay. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. I don't care what Liz Amazing says. I don't care what Liz Amazing thinks she says. She's burned almost all her bridges with the manufacturers because she cares more about her ad revenue than she cares about actually helping the industry. Okay. I don't have a problem with that. You may take that as a problem. So a lot of you in the comments later are going to be pissy at me about it. But that I don't find a problem with that because that's her decision. She's chosen to take the 30, 40 grand a month she makes in ad revenue rather than helping the industry move forward in a different direction. That's fine. There's a lot of people that do that in all the industries. There's guys that do that in the auto industry every day. They create chaos and bad news and negative stories all day, and they make a nice big fat paycheck over it. Whether it's worth it or not is your own personal decision with yourself. It has nothing to do with anybody else. So, do I have a problem with what she's doing? I have a problem on a professional level, not on a personal level, because I'm a capitalist. Okay. If for all the information I give out to people on this channel, if I was making 30, 40 grand a month, I'd be doubling and tripling down on it. Well, she'll never, you know what's funny about that, Patrick? Let me give you guys something interesting. So the second person I talked to 4 days ago, that's way up here, and I'm not gonna tell you who the person is, but they are way up there in the world of the RV industry. Okay. Not gonna tell you what part of it. There's like 6 different parts of the wholesale manufacturing side. I'm not gonna tell you where this person comes from, but apparently they've been a big fan of the channel since 2022. Apparently, during my first podcast episode, they've been watching ever since or listening ever since. So that was very interesting. They told me, they told me personally, but John, let me tell you something. If you brought Liz Amazing, any of the GMs, any of the corporate dealer YouTubers, any of the full-time RVers, any of those people on your podcast and actually did a real podcast episode, he goes, they would lose followers. You'll never get them on there. He goes, nobody wants to answer the tough question. Liz Amazing and Wingman Wisdom don't want to be asked questions that are going to make them look like idiots. Okay? They're not. They don't want to lose the revenue. They don't want to lose the audience. They don't want to lose the retention. And he goes, the other side's the same way. If they came on and they want to have a real conversation, I said, whoa, 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 there was one guy that wanted to have a real conversation. I'm the one that decided not to have him on because of some personal things with him and I. But outside of that, there was one guy, and he's like the guy in the RV world, okay? And he wanted to come on here. And that was a couple years ago, and I'm the one that said no. So it's not nobody would want to come on here. And he goes, no, are you sure? I go, yeah, absolutely. I got the text messages proving that he wanted to come on here. And I go, I'm the one that said, nep, nada. Especially after what occurred. So it's really interesting to hear the perspective that, and then what's really interesting is he said to me, he goes, John, you're never going to believe this. And I go, what? He goes, I was in the car with this certain president, CEO, VP, not gonna tell you who it is, but of one of the biggest RV companies in the world. I go, huh? And he goes, when I was in the car with him in Indiana, guess who's on his YouTube music player on the thing as a podcast list? I go, who? He goes, you. And he goes, when I asked him about it, he changed the subject. I go, what? And he goes, yeah, he changed the subject. I go, he goes, look, man, they all watch you, they all listen to you. And he says, I guarantee you that probably 75% of them, if they listen to you, they agree with like 90% of what you say. And a lot of times they wish they had the guts to say the same things you do. He goes, there's a select few people that hate your guts. And I go, I know. One called me a blowhard in the middle of a car, and we all laughed about it because everybody knows who the hell that is. And I go, and I know one other guy that's now okay with me. He hated my guts because I kind of was on one of his family members' brand's ass for a little while. Okay. He tried to get me fired from one of my jobs. Now he's okay, and everybody's kind of under the radar and low under the radar about it, whatever. But just crazy because, you know, it makes me, I got a phone call 3 days after my second episode ever on this. And it was a phone call where there's only two people in the world that call me this certain thing. And I didn't guess who it was until they finally told me who they were. And they're the reason why I kept this going. I was going to give up. I really was. I was sick and tired of hearing all the people call me names, and I was sick of it because it's like, why am I doing this? If nobody cares about the information I give to try to help people buy an RV, whether it's a motorhome, a fifth wheel, whether it's a Brinkley or a Coleman, that they have the education so when they walk in and they buy their Z3100 Brinkley, they have an understanding that it's not perfect, that it's got a chance of leaking the way they assembled it. Okay. If they go buy a Grand Design Momentum, a used one, they understand that they should have their frame checked every once in a while for frame flex or frame failure, and don't let it get beyond the problem that it already is or has become. Or if you're going to buy a Coachman Catalina, just check the recall list. I'm making a joke there, but check the recall list every week to make sure that one of the components they're using to build a travel trailer isn't on there. Give people confidence that they're not the biggest piece of shit, but they're also not the perfection that some people in expensive cars want to make it out to be. That way, when something does go wrong, not if, when something goes wrong, the first phone call isn't, well, you promised me, you told me that 1%. Did you guys just build the 1%? Or the phone call to the dealer that goes, who the hell put this thing together? You guys told me it was the best ever built fifth wheel on God's green earth. And I mean, believe me, that stuff happens because no one educates anybody. They're just trying to sell them and get them out the door. That's what this channel's about. You should see, if I could print all the emails that I've received over the years you guys have sent me, I mean, I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but I'd fill my 36-foot fifth wheel toy hauler with it, of people that email me and direct message me or even text me or call me and say, I just got one recently on Monday. The folks bought a Brinkley travel trailer. They have seen the videos before they were taken down of Brinkley's having major water intrusion, floor rotting problem. They've seen those videos. And when they saw my podcast and they saw my videos and they watched them in completion, not took clips and go, oh, he just hates Brinkley. Oh, he just hates this. Oh, he just hates that. Instead of doing that, they watched the whole thing and they're like, wow, okay. Then they went through and saw Brinkley's little guidelines on how the warranty works. They saw the Brinkley was there. It was there for over 6 months. They asked the dealer, hey, according to the warranty packet, the manufacturer says since it's been staying there for 6 months, you have to replace the seals to keep the warranty intact. They made the dealer contact Brinkley to put it together the right way so their warranty was intact. And they are super happy with the trailer. It's one of their most popular models they sell. It isn't like it's junk quality, guys. I always feel like it's overpriced for what it really is, but it's still not a bad travel trailer or a bad fifth wheel. and they are super excited. And they even said, without your video, we would have never bought the Brinkley. I like those emails because it means somebody paid attention and did their homework. It means when something goes wrong with their Brinkley travel trailer, unless it's like God forsaken, the frame snaps on them in the middle of nowhere. God, please don't do that. But I'm making an exaggeration there, okay? But that right there, that makes me a happy person when somebody reaches out and says, hey, I used to get emails from people that bought Momentums and Solitudes after the frame failure thing because they're like, hey, we know what to look for. I have one guy that says, hey, you know what? Because of you, we were able to save our fifth wheel from having to go back to Indiana. We actually had our local service shop look at it, and we were just starting to see the initial signs of frame failure on our Solitude. It was a 2023. And they were able to do it at the local service center spot and not have to go through all the horse manure of trying of it completely decimating their unit and having to be a part of that stupid class action lawsuit. They were able to get it done at the local level and not have it get too far because they went and did the test. I still go in grand design groups and still go, hey guys, just a reminder, if you own a 35-foot or bigger grand design fifth wheel, reflection, Solitude, Momentum, make sure to have your local guy when he's winterizing it or when he's doing solar or when he's doing an appliance service, have him test the frame to make sure there's no cracks, make sure there's no frame failure, no signs of the beginning of it. That way you nip it in the butt right then and there. And I say that almost every month in one of those videos. Does it mean I hate Don Lemon or Don Clark and Grand Design? No, it doesn't mean that. It means I would rather have a community of people that understand that it's a toy and we're going to have fun and we're going to enjoy ourselves. And that's no promise that things are perfect and nothing in the God's green earth. I don't care if it's an $11,000 Coleman or $500,000 mobile suites. You are going to need a toolkit and a sense of humor. You're welcome. Yeah. See, there you go. So the reality is it's an education. People need when people want to spend their money, if they want to go spend their money on a Tiffin Allegro bus, and there's no way you could talk them out of it, and it's got a million electrical issues and known, at least educate them so that way they know. If they know, then the consumer confidence of buying the product, they have a choice. If they say it's Allegro bus or bust, fine, they're not RVers. Go stay in five-star hotels. Go rent a cabin. Go on cruises. Less than 1% of the population of the United States of America and Canada buy an RV every year. Less than 1%. That's less than 400,000 people a year buy a new or used RV. That's it. It isn't millions of people that buy one a year. It doesn't happen. It's a small community. It's a small community. I know it feels bigger than ever because there's so many rigs that were sold during COVID. I get it. I understand. I really do. But it's still a small community. It's one of the reasons why I will never grow past 20,000 subscribers. It's not because people don't watch, it's because once they get the information, they don't need me anymore. You know, there's a lot of their fans that watch all the time. There's a lot of fans in Indiana that watch all the time on the manufacturing side. So I 100% get it, right? But it's not an industry full of millions and millions of people that go and buy something a year like they do cars. So I've been told by a lot of banks and credit unions that we are now at a point in history where they are not going to go older than 7 years starting June 1st, 2026. It has not been announced publicly yet, so I can't tell you what bank or what lending institutions have told me this because there's laws and hell, I'm not supposed to say anything anyway, but I'm going to say it anyway. But basically, 7 year rule now. So if you're looking to buy something used, if you're looking to buy a private party or used from a dealer lot, those older units that are 10 years old for 20, 30 grand, you better go finance them now. You better not wait till summer. You find a nice Class C motorhome at a private seller in your community and you don't have the 40,000 cash and it's 10 years old and you're going to finance say half of it, go get it now. Don't wait till summer. Because June 1st, 2026, it's going to almost be across the board a 7 year rule again. And we've gone through this before. We've gone through this situation before. That's funny, Patrick. We've gone through this before. We went through this in 2014 where, and I can name this bank because this bank no longer does RVs, but Ally Financial went from doing 12 years as the cap to 7. So it's not the first time that this has happened. It's not the first time it's been happening. So this is a phase of things I think that has to deal with the repossession rate. So right now, the voluntary repossession rate is at 3.6%. That is the highest it's been since 2014. And the highest number since, and actually the only time it's been higher was actually during the Great Recession when it was double digits. So you're talking about at one auction right now on the West Coast, there's 475 travel trailers and fifth wheels ready to go to the auction. And the problem with that is what most people don't realize, that 475,000 units are going to be overpriced. There's a lot of dealers that are making up, and it's not the corporate guys. These are small mom and pop dealers that are talking out of their ass right now. One guy in particular, he goes and shows you the auction he goes to. Seems like a nice guy, but he's full of shit. He goes to an auction somewhere, I think it's in the central US. There's 200 travel trailers, and he says, well, you know, this travel trailer here, a regular dealer is going to sell for like 25, 30 grand. We're probably going to be less than 20. I actually found that unit at the auction. That unit at the auction is going for $24,000 on a wholesale book of 17.5. So the bank has not dropped the price on that coach at all. So the reserve price is $24,000. Wholesale book is 17.5. So really, it leaves the dealership about $600 of profit to work. That's all it leaves, about 600 bucks. So what's going to happen, guys, and most people don't understand this, okay? When the new budget is done at the federal government level, what's going to happen is going to be catastrophic to all the conspiracy theorist people, okay? Now, I said this was going to happen in 2027. I think it's going to happen a year earlier. But when I said 2 years ago that all the voluntary repossessions are going to get sold to FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, because what's going to happen is you're going to have the largest bank bailout since the Great Recession, and it's going to do nothing with taxpayer dollars going going out of your pocket into the bank's pocket. What it's going to be is all these travel. So that's the reason why the banks are not dropping their drawers on these coaches. Okay, there are some steals that some credit unions not the larger banks, but some of the credit unions and smaller lenders that are like subprime lenders, they're being reasonable, and that's where this guy's making all his money is from those. So like Marine One, Medallion, Merrick, ACT, uh, Alliant Credit Union, Golden One, all these credit unions are sending these things to the auction, and they're still selling them for more than wholesale book, but not nearly what the big banks are. So the big bank keeps their price really heavy on the reserve to buy out the fifth wheel. So Grand Design Momentum goes up for sale. Wholesale book, let's say it's 50,000, retail 75,000. So at retail book, the bank says, okay, I want 72.5 for it. So nobody buys it. None of the dealers buy it, right? So it sits and sits and sits. Well, when the new budget comes in and it goes and all the money that's allocated to FEMA, FEMA is going to take that money and Trump is going to instruct FEMA to bail out the banks by buying all the used boats, all the used travel trailers, all the used fifth wheels, and all the motorized that fit within the FEMA guidelines for the emergency management system. And they're going to buy them out for the full loan amount, and it's going to go into FEMA's fleet. Then you're going to have the state step in and pick up the rest that FEMA doesn't. So you're going to have no shot at a lot of that inventory. Now, that's not a problem because there's still a decent amount of used inventory on the market, both privately and at the dealership level. So there's still plenty of inventory to select from. But if you're waiting to get those bank repos, you're never going to get a shot at them. The only shot you're going to get at them is if a dealer happens to get some of the ones from the credit unions and the smaller lenders that are not going to need the bailout, the Bank of America, US Bank, BMO, I mean, there's a ton of them. M&T Bank, they're all going to get, there's a bailout coming, but that bailout is not going to be money given directly to the banks for nothing in return like it did in 08, 9, and 10. It's going to be bailing them out of inventory that's going to go straight and repurposed for government use for hurricanes, wildfires, natural disasters, pandemics, epidemics, et cetera, et cetera. It's also going to have, you're going to see a lot of some of the motorized that qualifies for military use be repurposed for military use and emergency stuff. Okay. They will, Peter, but there's a difference. So the difference is if they can, when a bank goes and sells this to FEMA, okay, sometime probably around late winter to early summer of next year, it wipes out a lot of the debt and gets a lot of the money sent back to the bank. So it replenishes their cash reserve and their cash flow. They'll still go after you for the difference because there's a lot of people that are even upside down retail in the loan. But right now, what's going to happen is a lot of these banks are basically going to have to start understanding that a lot of these people are going to go bankrupt. They're going to go BK, and they're going to try to wipe out the debt after the repossession has been fully consummated. So they may not even have a shot at recuperating a lot of that money. So that's the bailout. The bailout is getting maximum retail value for those RVs, at least the ones that qualify for FEMA, and that way they can recuperate a lot. That's the bailout, because that they're going to need to be bailed out because they can't get bailed out of housing. Okay, so you guys got to understand, it is against the Supreme Court a while back would not allow the federal government to bail out the banks out of housing. They had to infuse them with cash in essence, or like a loan that the banks eventually did pay back after they all paid themselves their golden parachutes, right? And there's tons of movies and documentaries on that. But what occurs is that the housing market is so pathetically bad for the banks and the investors that they can't be bailed out of that industry the way that they were in '08, 9, and 10. The only way the federal government can bail them out without getting Congress involved is through FEMA. And that's how Trump will bail out the banks is he'll bail them out of all the cars and all the RVs that the bank is severely upside down in at the larger level. Okay, I've talked to a few guys, a few friends of mine in the car industry that have gone to auctions, and they said it's slim pickings to get one at the right price. There's plenty of inventory available to purchase, but to get it at the right price has been really difficult to do. It takes a lot of work. You got to research the lender, you got to research the lender's position on the market, position they're in debt and cash recovery, and then research the car and how much the car is going to bring. So there's a lot more research and looking, and it's still very tough. Like we bought two pieces from the auction. Both of them are beat up and we have to redo, but both of them were from small lenders. One was from a subprime lender on the East Coast, and one was from a credit union. But when we went to the auction to go buy, we had a plan of buying 9 travel trailers from the auction. Almost nothing went within even reasonability of the lending value. Not even close. And so they didn't sell. They didn't meet the reserve. And the bank said, basically, screw you, we'll just keep it until we get bailed out by FEMA. That's pretty much how it's going to work, what's going to happen. Okay. If it doesn't happen, let's say for whatever reason that plan gets blocked. I don't know the complications of bullshit politics, but let's say it gets blocked and that doesn't happen. That's when we'll start seeing some more used inventory actually come on the market through dealerships at a lower price, kind of like we do with consignments, right? So a lot of the consignments that dealerships have are a lot more reasonably priced than your private party or anything you purchase at the auction right now. So that's kind of where we're at as far as the industry when it comes to used RVs and comes to used travel trailers and fifth wheels, etc. Okay. Now, the last thing, the third piece, and this affects mobile suites, Axiom, Brinkley, Riverstone, Montana, the big expensive Montana. Basically, anybody that builds and sells a fifth wheel that the selling price is over $100,000, not sticker. Selling price is over $100,000. This affects them directly. Okay. And dealerships, you're going to want to pay attention to this. Okay. Starting March 1st, 2026, if you do not own a home, if you do not have a mortgage on your credit bureau, you will not be able to take a loan out over $100,000 on a 20-year loan. Credit unions might do it still on a 10 or 15-year term. But your regular lending institutions, and it's going to start with one lender, I can't name the name. It's going to start with one lender that works directly with every dealership across the United States. They specifically have warned me, if you got a unit over 100 grand, they better have a lot of down payment if they do not have a mortgage on their credit. There's 3 reasons why this is happening. Reason number 1 is because the lending institutions do not want you living in the coach. It is a recreational vehicle. If you're going to live in it, they want you to pay cash. Now, there are some things that kind of occur, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, hint, hint, yep, that they get a little mad at me about for speaking on, because I've said some things over the years to kind of hint to people how to kind of circumvent that. They are doing this because of the fact guys like me and guys like dealers have kind of taught people how to kind of circumvent that. Okay. So if you are planning on full time RVing and you rent your apartment, you rent your house, and you want to finance $100,000+ fifth wheel, you better do it before March 1st, 2026. We are going back to a little more of the old school RV lending when it comes to the high dollar units. Now, this doesn't affect you if you're buying a $75,000 fifth wheel, $80,000 fifth wheel. You're putting a big chunk of money down. You're buying a $120,000 Brinkley, a $150,000 Riverstone, a $250,000 mobile suites. If you got enough down payment to get you to $99,999 finance, you're fine. You don't need to worry about this. This is if you're financing over 100 grand. The other way that they will allow you to finance that is if you have the equivalent liquid in cash accessible through a lending institution. So basically borrowing against your own money you have in the bank. So we're going back to old school, what I got in the business doing. So there's a down, the reason why I said this affects Brinkley and Riverstone and Axiom isn't just the dollar amount. It's that a lot of these guys like Alliance and Keystone and a lot of these guys have all tripled and quadrupled down on building these big luxury fifth wheels that are dealer invoice over 100 grand. So you're building all these 45 footers and 42 footers that are this high dollar amount, and now you have now 0.5% of the people that buy an RV are looking for that high dollar, and most of those people don't have what the new requirements are going to be credit wise to purchase it. So you're doubling and tripling down on a product that has almost no market share anymore. Yeah, let's see how that works out. You know, now Brinkley travel trailers, Alliance travel trailers, your Arctic Foxes, your Rockwoods, your Flagstaffs, your Jayco Eagles, your Keystone Cougar travel trailers, that's not going to affect people because you're talking about less than 75 grand. In a lot of cases, you're talking about less than 40 grand. So it's not going to affect that market. That market actually will grow, and that segment of buyers going to grow. So they're just not going to have a lot of inventory out there because of the way things are going. But in all reality, this goes for motorized too. So you got to just you got to do your homework and your research when you finance these things, especially when you start getting the higher dollar amounts. You know, I got a call from a guy the other day that him and he's coming in to consign a Wolf Creek truck camper. He's buying a Super C, found a nice pre-owned one, I think in Missouri or something like that. And the finance manager over there at that dealership is a complete idiot. And fortunately, this guy called me wanting to see if I consign his truck camper, and we had like an hour and a half conversation about what he was trying to put together and do. And I'm like, you better have this guy call that lender and tell him you're taking the truck out of the trade and the truck camper, and that you want to keep the truck camper loan while it sells on consignment. If he doesn't tell him that, then it's going to turn into a shit show, especially since you live in California and you're traveling to Missouri to buy this used motorhome. It's not like he's buying a new one where he could buy it locally. He found a certain used one. There's only like 3 in the country used. So it's like, and all of them are east of the Mississippi River pretty much. So that you have to kind of keep in mind is a lot of the guys at the dealership level that sit in the finance office don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. I'm going to say 8 out of 10 guys sitting in that chair in front of the computer smiling, trying to sell you an extended warranty, sell you paint and fabric, sell you gap insurance, sell you all that crap, don't know shit. Okay? 2 out of 10 know what the hell they're doing, and that's usually why they've been at the same spot for like 20 years, because they have like an idea of how everything works and keep up with the trends, so that way they can adapt, right? So we just have to kind of keep that stuff in mind as we move along. And really, before I cut myself off for the rest of the night here and go on to my other channel I got to do a live stream on, um, thank you. Thank you for a bitchin' 2025. I have seen so much growth this year in views. We broke another record. Every year since I started this, we have doubled the views. Every single year we have doubled the views. And this year was no exception. We doubled it. So thank you. Thank you for the support. I'm going to keep doing what I do, because I think from overall, a lot of you guys love it. And the people that don't love it, they're delusional. And that's all I have to say about it. So until then, until tomorrow night, have a good one.